interesting project. One that I've only just been introduced to, but I immersed myself fully. And what was really good was I started at the very beginning with the book. For us today, we have Corey Brotherson. We've got Si. We've got the man himself, the author of the Caboodle, who has, to a certain degree, I think, dug great depths to not only put the project together, but also work with a very talented bunch of people to actually harness their respective skills into introducing this amazing tale, which has spawned Mr. Barry Nugent.
I'm glad this is being recorded because I could use that now.
And we've got Mr. Richmond Clements here as well. Now, what we'll do is we'll take some of the respective stories and then hopefully go into detail about these stories and how they've materialized. And more interesting is how each person has chosen their own respective strand to amplify the original nugget that Barry's presented. So, Barry, could you kindly introduce the concept, the overall concept, the inspiration, how it came about, and then we'll get on to the other tiers and bring the other gentlemen in.
Yeah. If we could have the first slide, please. This rather embarrassing sketch I did when I was about 14 years old. No one's really seen this sketch before, which is why it's slightly embarrassing. I did sketch when I was about 14 years old, so that's probably about nearly 30 years ago. And this was my first sort of sketch of Napoleon Stone, who's one of the main characters in Fallen Heroes, which is a novel. And when I was 11 years old, my brother took me to see Raiders of Lost Ark, and it just blew me away. I hadn't seen anything like that. And for years I wanted to try and do something like it, and I remember my mum saying to me, well, just go and write something. So I started writing stories, not very good stories, but I started writing stories, and everything felt like just a copy of Raiders of Lost Ark. Anyway, eventually I hit upon the idea of having this story of these different characters that were reflective of different genres. So I kind of had the world's greatest adventurer and the world's greatest spy and the world's greatest vigilante. So there's a very sort of, I'm not comparing myself, it's a very sort of League of Extraordinary Gentlemen type feel to it, but it's got a real sort of pulp sensibility. And I think what's good about Fallen Heroes from that point of view is that you can have about 6 main characters, so if you don't like one character, there's bound to be someone that you like. Whereas I just didn't like the idea of having a novel where you've just got that one central character that you follow through, because if you don't like that character, then the novel's already lost to you. So what happened as far as the comic goes is I was approached by a company to do a adaptation of the novel, and I said, yeah, that'd be great, and they put together like a creative team, most of which aren't here today. And but what happened was we were about halfway through planning issue 1 and the company went under. But the creative team loved the idea of it, so they all stayed together. I got some funding together and we put out the first 2 issues, which did really well. The first issue sold out in half an hour, it's a bit bizarre. And what happened after that was that Si, who'd read the book, really enjoyed it. I'm assuming he enjoyed it. Otherwise he's going to be really short-handed. And floated the idea of taking one of the characters and basically doing an individual story of that character that was outside of the novel. So it would be a standalone story, so you could just read that story and not even read the novel, but obviously if you went and read the novel, there's a little bit more there for you. So I said, yeah, great, go for it. So Si chose his character, which is a character called the Reverend. I'll let him talk more about it later. But what happened was, word got out that Si was working and stuff, and I started to then get approached by other people, other writers and artists wanting to get involved. And I gave them the same pitch: go and read a copy of the book, if you like it, come back, pick a character that you like and you love, rather than a character that you think is going to be a good story, pick one that you love, and do a story of it. So it's kind of spun out by accident. It wasn't really me sitting down with a white cat stroke and this is my grand plan. now that I think about it, I may well do that when I get home. It's just kind of happened organically, you know. And then again, I knew someone who was into doing audio dramas, and I approached him and said, would you be interested in putting together like a team to do an audio drama spin-off? He said, yeah, great. We've done 3 episodes of that now, and that's going really well. I got approached by a production company about 3 years ago, who were the company who did the Shark TV series, if anyone watched Shark, about doing a TV series, and they bought the rights. Sadly, it didn't come to pass, but it was quite exciting for a while. And that's probably enough for me.
Well, I mean, obviously, collaboration with the respective creatives around you is fundamental to this, and you brought Sai in. Now, the character of the Reverend taps into one of the areas that I find very fascinating with this, the juxtaposition of religion, malice, to a certain point, one man's determination to destroy. And I'm not going to give too much away, but Sai, would you kindly introduce the Reverend and how being brought into this project itself kind of gave you the inspiration to go off on a tangent of...
Just before you do that, I know, let's keep going. I'm trying to get into the Reverend bit. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. It's wonderful, lovely, lovely. There, stop. There you go.
There you go. Yeah. And introduce the Reverend.
Well, yeah, I mean...
and the inspiration that led him off on a...
Yeah, the nice thing about having got on board with this so early, really, for me, was that I had the widest choice of characters, and so, I mean, from my reading of the original novel, it seemed to me that the Reverend had the greatest potential of an untold backstory, because he is, you know, so driven, and we have certain hints about it, and some stuff that didn't actually make the final novel. But the great thing about working with Barry was always that there was never a question I could ask that he couldn't answer. There was no piece of information that I could be in need of that he hadn't already thought of. So essentially, my contributions to the story of Wrath of God, the one-shot Reverend story, were relatively minor. I mean, I added a little bit of definition to some of the things that you hadn't fleshed out. But the bones of that story were already there to be told. But we see in Fallen Heroes, and again without going too much into the spoiler territory, we see the Reverend in a very specific part in his overall story trajectory. And what I wanted to explore was much more his launch pad. What could have put him on this insane path of destruction? What single driving force could have pushed him this far? That he's justified a lifetime of outrageous violence. He justifies it with his religion, but there had to be something that would push him there, because there were many other, and we find out from the backstory, there are many other avenues that he's tried. You know, he's tried becoming a missionary. He's tried offering comfort to prisoners on death row. Nothing there could give him peace. So this initial turmoil, you know, we had to launch him on that, and then you see, you know, you understand where he comes from, you understand why he lands where he does, and as I said, the bones were all there.
I mean, the other sort of, I'd say, glue that holds this story, or the respective strands of this story together, is this beautiful organisation called Torch, which I take it you are all familiar with the stories as they've developed over time, so I'm not going to go into a 101 on Seeing Shadows. But how that story itself has developed from each character and each contributor. Richmond, you're historian.
Yeah.
You start a totally different strand. I wasn't quite sure initially how that was going, and then at the tail end, I formed my opinion as to what I thought of the book, which I posted on the group. On the group discussion, we've got a little Facebook group where the creatives talk about stuff, and I said it was a stroke of genius. No, I just said it was a stroke of genius Absolutely, but please.
Well, it's hard to talk about what you're talking about without spoiling.
Spoiling the entire story.
Okay.
Well, I will say.
How did he? I mean, what thread did he give you to go on, and how did you take that to?
Well, it started off Barry saying to me, because I'd done one of the first
Yes.
book I'd done Steph, so picking out a character, and we battled about ideas and come up with me writing a Catherine story, and I had this idea in my head of a whodunit set in a UN facility, so then you'd have the whole diplomatic immunity going on thing, which isn't really true, but it is in fiction. So
we can make stuff up like that.
And that's what the basis was. So we have a rather gruesome murder
In a place.
Yeah, in a school, which is populated by children of very, very, very rich UN delegates.
Yes.
So that's how it started.
That's how it started. But also, there's this bordering supernatural thread, which is no. I say it is evident.
Yeah, it might be that I'm not saying it's there or not.
Yes, I know you. That is the beauty. It alludes to.
Yeah.
Which is part of the reason why when on going through this, I kind of sat back and said, Christ, you've built something that gives me the opportunity for my mind to go in so many different directions.
There's an author, I don't know if anybody you've heard of, Phil Richmond, who writes a series of whodunits, and the character's a female minister, and every one of them is written in a way that you can decide that's supernatural or it's not. Yeah, so I'd hopefully tried for, well, there's a cover for something like that.
And the central character, and this isn't a spoiler or anything of such, but the central character borders on totally and utterly disturbed.
I think that's fair.
I mean, was any guidance given with in relation to that?
These guys, I'm sure, will tell you Barry is quite precise on pretty much every word of dialogue.
But not anal.
No. Well, not the first. Certainly. But yeah, no, he's a good editor, and he knows these people better than we do, you know, so he's quite precise in the dialogue, and then he'll give you a bit of background stuff. And, you know,
well, hopefully I'll get to work with him on something at some point.
Well, I think with Catherine, just to kind of explain for people who may not have actually, hands up anyone who's not read the novel, doesn't know anything about Sunshine Shadow. Right. I did ask, and you... Because you didn't ask forcefully enough, mate, that's why. Obviously I told you the initial kind of concept of the story, and it's an adventure story. That involves this kind of team of heroes coming together to fight, effectively, a resurgence of a medieval cult. But where Catherine comes in, she works for an organisation called Torch, Tactical Operations Research Control Headquarters, which is basically kind of a little bit like SHIELD, but not really, for the UN. And when we meet Catherine in Fallen Heroes, she's left Torch. She's left, and we don't know why. And she's quite a tortured character. You know something had happened with her in the book, but you don't kind of know what. But it's not necessarily important to that story. And what we do with his story is we don't answer that question, but we start to give you hints as to why she may have left, especially in the conclusion to that.
And I will say another thing, we thought, well, let's do a whodunit as a comic. Nobody does them, this will be a great idea. You soon find out why nobody does whodunits as comics. So really, really difficult.
And I would definitely recommend, if people pick up, obviously, Tales of the Fallen and Tales of the Forgotten, which are the two comic anthologies, to read Size, Wrath of God, then read Historia. Because the last sort of 2 pages, I don't want to say anymore, I'm really shredding it. It all comes together.
It'll open it up.
Yeah.
It'll open it up.
But again, the whole driving force was these should be standalone stories that people can really enjoy, and it's not a big marketing Marvel drive that for this big event you have to read these comics. It's it's just giving people different routes in.
I mean, the development of the respective characters and the narrative itself offers another insight, which is, I believe, from a black perspective in how you have structured some of the characters. Corey, you worked on a cracker with regards to this, and what I liked a lot was how you kind of built the family life of this particular character into the story, and kind of started using it as a building block towards telling the background, but also throwing forward. How did that work? And were you expecting Barry to? Well, obviously you chose your character, I assume.
Well, actually, when Barry asked if I wanted to do a story for Unseen Shadows, the first character I was immediately drawn to was the Reverend. And so I already had that.
I'd seen when I read the novel, it said size writing down, no question.
Yeah, it was. If you didn't
Takes the
realise,
involved early, it really does.
But no, there's no way you couldn't write that character. It was
exactly. And once you
It
realise
felt like a good fit.
I mean, you all know size. I take it you all know size work. Yes, good. So it makes sense.
to give you an idea of what a reverend's like.
and as soon as you realise that Sai writing. As soon as you realise Sai's writing anyway, but as soon as you realise Sai's writing a character like the Reverend, you realise you are not going to touch that character. Whatever you do you're going to do to that character, Sai's going to top it. He's going to get to the very pinnacle of it. So,
Unless, of course, it's me.
of course.
Oh no, let's not be too
Right now.
but honestly, it was very much a case of, okay, well, let's step away from the Reverend here and try and look at another character. And Barry gave me a list of characters that were available, and I saw Ben, and initially I looked at the character of Ben and thought to myself, well, here is actually a character that kind of speaks to me in a way, because he has this strange moral code that sits within, that runs totally against the fact that he's a thief. And he's a thief that only steals from people that he feels generally people that are worthy stealing from, that kind of on that level that he doesn't want to really kind of dip into that murky lifestyle. And if they're of a certain caliber of criminal, or they're particularly rich and decadent or what have you, then he's more likely to go to them and steal from them than he would be, say, a person that he feels is actually good, honest, upstanding citizen. And when we were talking originally about the actual plot itself, and Barry was quite keen on introducing really Ben's sister, June, and we started kind of batting a few ideas around, and in the end we kind of created this very strong kind of family unit where Ben's character, I mean, he'd lost his mother, and obviously that was such a big defining point in his life, that between him and June they've kind of created this immense bond. But June at the same time doesn't particularly approve of the fact that he is a thief, effectively, despite the fact that he may have this moral code. So it became this wonderful kind of this wonderful depth of character that I thought would be great to explore, not only because you get to see Ben in himself in his day job, and then how he deals with people that he feels are kind of almost that criminal element that are too much kind of below him, but also how he interacts with his sister and how she feels and what she thinks of his lifestyle.
I mean, Barry, this isn't the first time you've run into Ben, is it?
No, obviously Ben's in the novel, and Ben is. I like to call Ben the Han Solo of the Fallen Heroes world, because he's the kind of cocky, arrogant guy that you kind of need, really. He's the one that I think one of the best scenes for me to write in the novel, because obviously the first half of the novel you've got these characters all in their separate adventures, and then they come together in the second half of the novel. And the most hardest, it's probably took me about 3 months to write, was when they were all together in the same room, because I knew that certain characters would be drawn to certain characters, like the Reverend and Napoleon. There's a kind of duality with them, whereas Ben really wouldn't be drawn to any of them, because he's so, for want of a better word, up his own arse. That when I did that scene, it's a very grand, very epic scene. We've got to get together, we've got to save the world, and basically Ben's the only one that goes, screw this, I ain't doing that, and he goes to, and he leaves the room, and the only reason that he comes back is because they offer him money, and that's Ben in a nutshell, really. But he does have this kind of moral code underneath it, and I want to say Ben's kind of a little bit based on me, but doesn't make me sound very good then. But when Cora and I talked about Stolen, and obviously this intense loss that Ben had, a lot of it reflected my own loss, because when I was writing Fallen Heroes, you know, my own mum had passed away, so a lot of that kind of fed in to a lot of the stuff with Ben. So when we talked about doing Stolen, we kind of explored that a lot more, that he's always got that kind of loss at the back of his mind and what his mum would think of what he does now.
He does have a lot of family baggage.
Yeah, yeah, oh yeah. Some of which I don't want to talk about because that's a huge spoiler in the book. So, but yeah, he has a lot of baggage. But he's a sharp dresser.
Before we get on to talking about the multi-platform sort of elements of this stuff, and how not only are you working with various creators and illustrators and artists to actually flesh out the universe, giving each strand a totally different feel. Let's talk about the spiritual sort of occultish edge of the whole story. On reading the novel, was very fascinated by the fact that you were quoting the verses from various books, you know, which tied in. At first I wasn't quite sure about them, but the further I got into the story, the more it made sense. Did that take a lot of research? Are you a religious man yourself? And how did they come about? Or did you crowdsource them?
I'm not. I suppose I come from quite a religious background. I mean, my parents were very religious, and so we were kind of brought up in that kind of household. I wouldn't necessarily say I'm religious now. I kind of believe in the fact that it's very arrogant for me to assume that I know everything, and that, you know, that we still don't. Thank you. That we still don't know. You know, there's so much out there that we still can't understand and explain. So, and whether or not that's, you know, a god who looks like Santa Claus, or whether it's energy or whatever, I don't know. You know, so I suppose I'm more spiritual than religious, if that makes sense. But a lot of those themes, obviously, with like the Reverend, sort of come through the book and stuff. In terms of the occult stuff, I did do a fair amount of research and stuff, because when I was developing Napoleon's character, and Napoleon Stone is basically, he's an inventor, but he also works for an organisation called the Icarus Foundation. And what I wanted to do was not to have something like the, does anyone read Hellboy? Loads of it, or reads. What I didn't want to have is like the, what they BPRD. Yeah, I didn't want people to just go out to just the BPRD. And well, to be fair, when I wrote Fallen Heroes, I was completely oblivious to the comic world anyway. It was a prose novel, that's what I was writing. But with the Icarus Foundation, they're very much focused on cults and religious orders, and from a purely investigative point of view, and they only get involved if those cults basically turn to like supernatural means and they start taking human life. Because their kind of belief is, you believe whatever you want to believe, but you start going to the dark side and basically we're going to turn up and give you a smack. God, I might write that down.
You should be a writer.
I should be a writer. And so I wanted them to feel like a kind of, much more of a kind of research base with a sort of, obviously in Indiana Jones kind of tinge to it, but much more from the cult point of view. They don't run around the world kind of collecting mystical artifacts. To kind of sum up Napoleon, you know, if he used anything mystical, it's just a means to an end. It's not something that he kind of covets. He's there to do a job, and that job is to save lives.
I mean, the two organisations, both Icarus and Torch, in some cases you'd say their roles are interchangeable. One's good, one's evil, and vice versa, depending on the characters that come to the fore within each part of this. Richmond, how did you...
I'll do it every time. It's funny every time.
I mean, how did you tap into that, having followed the stories as they've developed over time, or was...
Excuse me a minute. I'm working on a couple of other things with Barry, and I wanted to check I'm allowed to talk about it because this is relevant to that.
Okay.
With Catherine.
I thought you were going to answer.
No, because as you were saying, when you're writing a character in that organisation is the good guy. So when I was writing this story, I get Torch are the good guys. Yeah. I'm now currently working on a couple of other comics for Barry, but I'm also writing Napoleon Stone Choose Your Own Adventure book,
which no one knows.
So don't tell anybody.
I'm going to tweet this, hang on.
So obviously in it, the reverse is true. They're the good guys, you know,
Yes.
in that one.
Yes.
And it's Napoleon Stone and the Army of Set. That's what it's called. It's set in Paris.
Didn't say you could say the title.
Forget it. I'm going to start it. Kill everybody again. Yes. So it depends. Well, you're right from that. Every character thinks they're the hero. So it's the same. It's not real. Everybody thinks that. Every character thinks the story's about them, and that's how you have to write it.
And I think what I wanted to do with the book was I wanted people to think that these guys had tons and tons of adventures.
Yeah.
And that this sort of latest one was so big that we needed to have all of these guys involved in it. And all of these guys on top of their game. And literally that first half of the book, which is effectively introduction for the characters, I wanted it so I could actually lift it out and carry on writing for that character, and they could actually have 6 different books. That was my idea, and in many ways that's kind of what's happened now with the comics, is they've gone on and done that.
Corey, you contributed 2 stories to this mix. One that does centre on Icarus and some of the background to that world. The various overtones and the background to all of this in itself, did it come from the earlier parts, or were you given clear guidance as to where you were supposed to take this particular thread?
Well, originally Barry came to me and asked if I wanted to do a story starring Victoria Sullivan, who's on the left of that picture there, and she originated from the radio play that's been created. And then Barry kind of said, okay, we've got 2 ideas that we're going to run with here. We can either do technically an origin story for her, or we can do like a kind of like a pulp adventure story. And the origin kind of story kind of appealed to me. The only problem being is that it had to be done within 4 to 6 pages. So it was going to be very, very condensed, very concise. But Barry kind of threw a few elements at me and said, this is part of her origin, this is the background of how Victoria Sullivan became to be. And that really appealed to me in a sense. It was very few pages to work within, so it was managing to get all that information within a short space of time, and then create a conflict and resolution, which didn't kind of feel like you left shortchanged. But it was all about really appealing to that sense of, okay, this is where the person kind of came from. This is the point where Victoria Sullivan's character and personality began to grow within the Icarus Foundation.
I mean, the other unique thing about this is your approach to what a concept that people call transmedia, which is a story told across various platforms. Something that I do a little bit myself. Now, Barry, you seem to have taken a totally different approach. You have. But it's a 2-part question, and then we go around and we'll throw it open to people who want to ask us. 1, why? 2, how do you choose platforms? Because obviously, not only are you dealing with one story, but a one story created by many people across different platforms in different installments. You knew this was coming. That's why you asked me to come and
I'll tell you how the Choose Your Own Adventure book came about.
Okay, please.
I had an idea, and I emailed Barry. It says, hey, have you ever thought of doing a Choose Your Own Adventure book? And he goes, are you pitching this to me? Which I wasn't at the time. I just thought this would be a good idea. And I suppose so. So that's probably, I suspect, how you got most of it. Yeah.
As for, right, so 2-part question. The why not?
Yes.
What was the second question? I mean, I think
Okay, start with radio.
How it came about?
Yeah. How it came about, why, who you chose to do the radio.
I suppose for me, because I love so many different mediums. I love audio dramas, I love comics, I love books, I love films. It was kind of about trying to get that story and those characters out there in as many different mediums as possible, because I have a lot of friends who really want to support the novel, but have never read a novel in their life. They don't read novels, they don't like novels. So that was one of the reasons why I was so keen on doing the adaptation of the novel as a comic, because they're more likely to pick that up. Same with the, I had people who love audiobooks.
Yeah.
So I talked to David Alt and said, look, would you narrate the novel? He said, yeah, sure. So we did that. With the audio drama, I knew a guy in the States who was already doing audio dramas, and he'd read the book. And I said, would you be interested in putting together a team for an audio drama? And he said, yeah, sure. You know, so we went out to casting and stuff like that. And it's important to note that there's probably, I don't know, about 40 people involved in Unseen Shadows, I would probably say, about 40 people. And for me, it's very much kind of like, it is why not? You know, I would do anything in any medium to get the word out about it. But what I find more interesting is, why would I just do the book on different mediums? You know, why would I just, because that's a bit boring, isn't it? You know?
Absolutely.
I can do the book in different mediums and go, yeah, you can have it in these different versions, but why can't we tell stories around the book? And they give people roots in, you know, and I was very, I think that's the one sort of thing I've always been clear with these guys, is they must be standalone stories. Yes, we can kind of tie in nice little things like Si's story with the Reverend. Yes, it kind of answers some question of his origin, but it's not like when you read the book, there's a huge sign that says, no more, you must read Wrath of God, otherwise this question will never be answered. 9.99 from Amazon. You know, I did not want that, you know, and anyone who's come and spoken to me on the table over the weekend, I've said these stories are standalone. Now, obviously, people can argue how standalone they are, because I'm still learning how to do it. A lot of these things I've never done before.
But you can look on, there are connections to the novel and direct references, but you can look at them as Easter eggs, you know.
Yeah, and that's kind of, yeah. And
it
was kind of like when you emailed me to say, I've read Tales of the Fallen, Tales of the Forgotten, and I see everything. It was a bit of a, I now see the world. But it's because you've read the book quite recently. But I've had other people who haven't read the book in ages, who read the anthology, so I really enjoyed it, because I couldn't really remember what happened in the book, but I didn't need to. You know, and that's what I wanted. It's about giving people roots in.
I mean, how do you choose some of these things? I mean, one of my favourites here is the Immaculate Abortion. That's dark and dark. But why? I mean, I can see, you know, how the story's developed and why you chose it. But my main thing was, why didn't you, with what had been written, choose Si's work and do that as an audiobook, so that people could actually conjure those images in their minds? I mean, his stuff is absolutely awesome, and it's a follow-on from, you know, things like Cancer Town and stuff, which are just blinding. But I just sort of thought, I'm going through it, even the first few panels, I thought, if I was sitting back on a Saturday night with a glass of wine, listening to someone narrate and paint that picture for me, it would be haunting. So why not as part of an audio?
Yeah.
What, as like a prose?
Yeah.
Right. I'll get to it. This is the question I feared no one ever asked. The one thing that I've always been very protective of is prose. Because that's what I do.
Yeah. Could you say, I'd sent that boy stuff for the book, and he goes, "This is weird. Somebody else is writing Napoleon's thoughts," you know.
And what's, I mean, it's weird enough for me. As I said to Corey, when Corey sent me the script for Stolen, and Ben is his dialogue is so of me. That's the dialogue that comes out of me, really, you know. A lot of the other dialogue from, you know, Napoleon and whatever, you can kind of read over and see similarities, but I think Ben is quite a unique, cocky kind of character. And I was a bit worried. I was like, I don't really know if anyone can kind of capture that Ben-ness. And Corey sent me his script, and I had to send him an email to go like, seriously, mate, it's like you're in my head. Get out of my head. You know, I almost said no, because I'm like, I don't want him. Because what if he goes and starts writing novels?
Are you telling me that Sai really is visualising some of the conjuring up that rawness that you get in the opening part of Immaculate Abortion?
I think with what Sai did with Bob, I think is amazing. And the reason why it's amazing is that in Fallen Heroes, Bob is a nothing character.
Yeah.
He's a not nothing character. Wrong way to put it. He's a minor character. I use him as a vehicle to introduce Napoleon.
Yeah.
And when I wrote him, in my head, I'm like, I want him to be a bastard and not a really nice guy.
This is really. You talk about all the different characters coming from various traditions, discrete traditions, but largely grouped within the pulp genre. But what Kelsey was for me was an everyman. He was to an extent. He was almost a reader's eye into. So you're introducing Napoleon and Vincent and the cult setup.
Yeah.
You're doing that all third person. We have a filter of somebody who's got a much more understandable frame of reference and a much more understandable worldview. And the fact that he survives that encounter painted a picture to me of a guy who had the survival instinct of a feral rat, and that's what it takes.
Yeah.
You know, to travel, to make that journey, essentially, retaining that core of yourself. So that places him, to me, at the very heart of Unseen Shadows, because he's the guy. I used to be. I was a huge fan of an old TV series called Kolchak the Night Stalker, and what we had was an everyman's perspective, a rather ruthless man, but a guy who could experience all these things and emerge with the core of himself intact. And really, the Immaculate Abortion of Dina Lee is the Tijuana kidney story. Everyone's heard this urban fallacy that somebody will wake up in a bathtub full of ice with a scar and an organ missing. So I wanted to do something with that kind of. It has elements of body shock. It has elements of noir to it. It's a crime story, and yet it's something else. And that really is a crime story, and yet again that's right at the heart of Unseen Shadows. Yeah. So we have we have this where instead of having an organ removed, there's a woman who finds that she has had something added. There's something now as a result of this experience. There's something to her that there wasn't before, and you need a third party. You need an eye through which you can look and experience this, and still emerge out the other side. And what does it take to survive? Because every story will. So I'm thinking that Kelsey really could go off in a number of directions. There are so many different. Yeah, there's so many different things you can go into. But you have to have, I think, this somebody with the ground level view on these magnificent events.
Well, we are running out of time, but I would like to throw open if we have any questions for the panel. Anyone who would like to ask, inquire, find out more, throw forward?
I was talking the other day at the table about the TV.
Sorry.
I was talking the other day at the table about the TV side, and you talked about how there are a lot of changes there, even though I didn't come to complete fruition. Clearly you're coping here with input, but you've still got control. How much could someone change something like an interpretation that you kind of accept? Do you have to keep everyone together, or does someone sometimes come to you with an idea that you think actually that does fit the character even though I haven't realised it? Basically, how much of a control freak are you?
I was stroking my chin in a really control freak way, so that probably answers the question. I'm quite a big control freak, but at the same time, I'm always on the basis that if you pitch it to me in the right way, as in you can back it up, then I'm more than happy. And I think, I'm probably not the best person to answer the question, but I think these guys...
that's what the editor does, and that's what you do.
I think these guys would probably attest to that. And even when I say to people, you can't do that, I don't just say, no, you can't do that because I'm the author, you do what I say. I say, you can't do that because Kelsey wouldn't say this because of these reasons. Or, Ben wouldn't do that because of these reasons, And some of the stuff I've asked people to do, because Pete Rogers, he'd written a story which is Fragments of Fate, which is a Napoleon story, and there's stuff that I've got him to put in, which he still doesn't really know why I've asked him to put in, because they kind of link in a little bit to the third book, you know. So, no, I don't think I'm a control freak from that point of view. I think I'm really open to listen to ideas, because these guys make me look good. So, you know, why wouldn't I listen to them? The whole point of me working with great writers and artists is to get their input.
Say that again, great.
The whole point of working with great writers and Richmond is to get their
I
input.
deserve that.
But very quickly, is there any more questions?
Any more questions? How important is independence here on projects like this?
Define independence.
Independence, total control, at least of
Very.
your baby.
Very important, which is why I formed the company in the end, Unseen Shadows Limited, because I think, it's what I was saying to someone today, as an indie creator, to give an example with the novel that I'm selling here is a special edition that you can only get here, and it's got things like deleted scenes and stuff that I deleted out of the novel. I've kind of put at the end, and I've put little descriptions of why I deleted it out and stuff like that, and I've got an alternate chapter that I'd originally done and stuff like that. These are the sort of things that in normal books and bookshelves you don't get, because obviously they've got to go through a publisher and there's all that kind of control. But the beauty of being an indie creator, whatever you're in, comics, acting, whatever it is, you can do whatever the hell you want. So long as you do it and it looks good and it looks professional and it is a good story, people will pick it up. That's always been my sort of motto, really. And really quickly, what's coming up is we've got, can we go on, and again, ooh, future,
Oh, that's good.
and again. This is the first, I'm going to whiz through really quickly because I haven't got much time. This is a second page from Fallen Heroes issue 3, which is obviously the adaptation of the novel. People who've read the novel, put your hand up. People who remember Joshua Gray, put your hand up. That middle panel, bottom panel there is the very first time you see Joshua Gray, so I was very excited to get that page. I only saw it last week. Can we move on? Cool. Woohoo! This is Cadmus's Lord, which is obviously, because he's whooping, Richmond's story. I'm just going to talk through.
No, go for it, yeah.
This is going to be set, this is a weird one, a really interesting one, because this is going to be set 70 years after the trilogy, which I haven't finished writing. Ends. And it's basically kind of, Cadmus' Lord kind of says it in the title. The actual bad guys in the trilogy are called the Book of Cadmus. And it's kind of, they won. There's a reason for this. When we get to, we'll get there when we get to the last book. It all becomes clear.
He hasn't even told. You've given me very, very big hints.
So if you're thinking we've just told us the end of the story, I haven't. But this is a really cool one, and basically this is a femme who is a spy / assassin who works for the Book of Cadmus.
And actually, the last page of this story is, at the minute, I think it's one of the best things I've ever read. I love it. I'll not like it in 2 weeks, but at the minute,
It's very good. Can we move on? And just here again. Swagger and Steel. Love that. Mainly because I came up here. This is another Ben story, but this is a full-length graphic novel which Corey is writing. We don't have an artist yet, so any artists in the house, come and see us. And this is going to be about the early days of Ben, basically the first story where he meets Steph, who we've not really talked about, but effectively Han and Chewie, really.
After you out of the name.
Yeah, and they kind of meet together. So that's really fun. We're already about to run.
that's a very clever title.
Quite.
Yeah.
I get it. Brilliant.
Thank you. I'll be here all week. Moving on. Reverend Blood Cries Out is sorry again. This is another full-length graphic novel this time, and it's being done by the same creative team who did Wrath of God. So if you liked Wrath of God, this is like 88 pages of Wrath of God. I've read, if your heart can handle it, I've read the first 2 scripts and it's stunning. So, moving on. This is the Chimera Factor, which is another full length. This is full length. to make a note of these. This is a full-length Steph Conisbee story. This is her early days. This is, no, it's not. It's not
between book 1 and 2.
This is between Fallen Heroes and the second book.
I'll keep you right.
I know. This is between Fallen Heroes and the second book, which is called Forgotten Warriors. And this kind of sees as slightly harsher Steph. Yeah, moving on. This is The Lament of Lady Cadmus, which is being written by that gentleman there. Everyone look at me. And basically this is focusing on Oliver Cadmus, who is the founder of the Book of Cadmus, so effectively the chief baddie. And it focuses on his return from the Crusades and more importantly his mother Mary and these lovely gentlemen in shadow who are the Cabal, who effectively run the Book of Cadmus. And moving on, Forgotten Warriors, yay! This is the last one. This is the This is the sequel to Fallen Heroes. It picks up 3 years after the events of Fallen Heroes, and it's very much a lot of the heroes from the first book, being really careful, are on the periphery of this sequel. So this is me focusing on the sidekicks, for want of a better word, and making them the heroes. Because so many books, just you pick your hero and you follow it through all the time. You just get Batman, Batman, Batman. And what I wanted to do was, what would happen if I took Robin and built him up to that kind of mythic stage of Batman? And this is what this is about. So it's looking, you see a lot more of Catherine in this, a lot more of Steph, a lot more of Vincent, who is effectively Napoleon's sidekick, right. And you see far less of Napoleon, far less of Ben, far less of Luther, and the other characters. So it's going to be interesting to see how people deal with that thing. But hopefully, fingers crossed, that will be out next year. And breathe.
Well, thanks to Corey, Ty, Barry, Richmond, and you, and ladies and gentlemen, Unseen Shadows.